Welcome back to all our retiring public sector clients. We're now at the second of 3 retirement seminar videos dedicated to giving you useful advice as you approach your retirement.
And we'd like to thank all of you who have sent us positive feedback from the first video, and it's still available on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. And just to assure all of you who have requested a retirement consultation, we will be in touch with you at some stage over the next week. And remember, the retirement information pack is still available free of charge. If you want to just pop myself an email, it's sarah.connolly@ipf.ie.
We'd also like to thank all of our speakers who I feel gave some very useful information last week, but just to point out again, and I know I said this last week, but just to point out again that the information they give can be general, and we would recommend that you consult either these or other professionals before making any substantial decisions about your own retirement.
Yes, it's important to remember that the decisions you make before and at retirement, they can determine the quality of life you have in retirement. So this is why we'd recommend you contact us to arrange a retirement consultation.
What seems to have come across very strongly from all the speakers last week was the importance of making a plan. And with our retirement consultation, we can help you assess your own particular needs and objectives and give you good information and guidance so that you can make a plan which best suits your own particular case.
So you can contact us by phone or email at the contact details below to arrange a preliminary consultation. We have 35 financial advisors, all who are specialists in this area.
Our retirement date is very rarely what we expect it to be. So let's have a look now at what our experts have to say about what you can expect as you approach yours.
Typically, they may have attended a pre-retirement course in the lead up to retirement.
Sure.
We would always advise people do that. The more information they get before they retire, the better. They will do a final meeting with their superannuation department. The superannuation department will walk them through how their pension's going to work. There are certain items that they will need to settle the claim. We will send out a checklist, so you will need P60s, possibly your last year's 10 years salaries. You'll need a photo ID, a utility bill. Other items that people might need is if they have other pensions, they're in receipt of other pensions. But look, we will help our clients through this process. It can be quite a daunting process for the clients, but it's something we're doing week in, week out, and it's actually quite simple. So look, don't worry, we'll help you get there and get everything done.
What's really important in the 60 is look at what the main problem people have when they get older. So what you want to do is two things. You want to maintain your muscle mass, maybe increase it a little bit, and you want to maintain your flexibility.
Sure.
Your muscle mass is essential because we all lose muscle muscle from the age of 30. And when you look at older people who are very weak, you see they really have no muscle in their legs or their arms. So you can maintain your muscle mass. And to do that, you need to focus on resistance exercise. So a lot of people think they walk and they think that's enough. But that doesn't do anything for your muscle mass. So you need to do some form of resistance exercise. And there are different types. You can do weights if you want. If you like a gym, you could do weights at home. You can do yoga. You can do Pilates. You can do strength classes. They are all type of exercise when you're actually building a bit of muscle.
Sure.
And building muscle is important because that's what keeps you strong and straight. And it's what prevents you from having osteoporosis. So I say to people, write down a plan and stick with it. If your best time to do exercises in the morning time, stick with it, like if you were going to work. Because when you're going to retire, you don't have the strict routine anymore.
Sure.
And if you have a strict routine, it's much better for you to stick with it. It's easier to stick with it. So make a plan, and whatever plan you make, revise it after a while. Okay, and if your plan works, perfect. If your plan hasn't worked, then maybe try to change into something. So for women, you have a few things. So you have your breast check program that's started already in your 50, continues in your 60. It's really important that you go to those appointments. For women, cervical cancer screening will stop at some stage, and that's okay. A lot of women panic about that because they think cervical cancer is really important at their age. But if you haven't got cervical cancer in your 60, you're not going to get it then. And for both men and women, there is a bowel screening program, and that's a program that you receive at home. You will get a little kit at home, and you have to provide a little stool sample and send it off.
Sure.
And that's a really important screening for bowel cancer. For men, you also have prostate cancer, so an annual examination with the doctor is sufficient, and the doctor will also do blood tests to check if you're at risk or not. And there are all things that are quite important. So really and truly, you should see your GP once a year, even if you're absolutely fine.
The first step really is, there are other practical considerations which aren't really legal considerations. You know, what's the market like? Where do I want to live?
Sure.
Have I a mortgage? The first step you really need to take is to contact a local estate agent who will put the property in the market for you. Traditionally, the best time to sell a house is spring or summer, but a good house will sell all year round in the current market. The next step is to contact your solicitor, who will take up the title deeds for you and prepare the contracts for sale. Some people try and juggle selling their own property and purchasing a new property and have the closings on the same date. That can be done. It can be a little bit tricky, but if you speak with your solicitor soon, they can, as soon as possible, they can try and manage both of them so they close on the same date. So what we would generally advise people to do is to go sale agreed on your own property first, and have a binding contract in relation to that.
Yes.
And then go sale agreed on the property you wish to purchase.
Sure.
And in both contracts, it's very important to have them subject to the other sale going through or contingent. So for example, if you're selling your own house and you sign a contract and the person you're buying the house from decides to pull out of the sale, you can then pull out of the sale of your own property without any penalty. Once the property is sold and the proceeds arrive into the account, we can get redemption figures from the bank, and the mortgage can be redeemed within the space of a couple of days.
What we would suggest to people is, well, make sure you let somebody know you're going on holidays.
Right, okay.
To look after the house, maybe turn on the lights, put the lights in the house on a timer switch. Maybe somebody just parking the car in there, keeping an eye on the post. And that gives the impression that somebody is there. It's important then to ensure that, you know, the valuables, if someone is breaking into a house now, obviously cash and jewellery are still the two big items that they're looking for. Computers and all that, you know, they're not worth a whole lot nowadays. But if somebody in the house has an awful lot of jewellery, they should consider certainly hiding it somewhere in the house. Typically, the number one room in the house that's been searched in nearly every burglary is the bedroom. The bedroom and the hot press. You know, there are two rooms that would definitely be searched in every break-in. So if you're looking to hide somewhere, put it somewhere where you'll know where it is when you come back, whether it's after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But you will find you'll forget where you're putting it. So send yourself an email or a text directing you to a part of the house is what we would suggest. Certainly not leaving valuables, you know, lying around the place in the bedroom or nearby where they can be taken. You know, with the camera systems nowadays, you can actually physically see what's going on in your house. So some will have technology, but if you don't, you know, look at ways just keeping the most important parts safe and secure. So then even if somebody does get in, they're going off it very readily.
Like, the only difference that they've experienced is that they won't have the same level of income. So because they're earning less, they probably fall into the lower tax bands, which means they may not be paying tax at the higher rate of tax. So for a single person, if their pension is below 33.5 grand a year, they'll be in the low rate of tax. For a married couple, if it's below 44 grand, they'll be in the low rate of tax. Okay, well, like, they're no longer PAYE workers, so the tax isn't deducted at source. So I suppose we specialise in that as well. They would need to register for income tax, and depending on the type of business, they may need to consider registering for VAT. And if they're going to take on employees, they will then need to consider how they're going to operate the payroll and how they're going to operate PAYE.
Right, okay.
Any income that they earn from self-employment will be taxed at their marginal rate of tax. So if their pension is using up most of their tax band, any income they earn from self-employment will be at the higher rate.
Okay.
There are exemptions for people who have been unemployed for 12 months. If they've been unemployed for 12 months, there's an exemption of up to 40 grand for the first 2 years' income. So that means the first 40 grand of the first 2 years' income is exempt for tax. Well, the main thing with that exemption is that they need to be unemployed. For the 12-month period. Like, if they go straight from retirement into self-employment, that exemption won't exist.
Right.
But if they've retired, they've done nothing for 12 to 18 months, and then they set up, well, then the exemption may apply to them.
we had to do a pre-retirement, an exit interview, I remember.
Sure.
And I always loved working in James, so that wasn't very hard for me to do there. I didn't really have an awful lot to fault it with. So apart from that, I just signed whatever, papers came my way. I do remember that I bought back extra years because I had taken time off when the children were small, and I had bought back that. Now that was something else some people might need to consider, because that can be easily done. And to contact your HR or your superannuation department if you have any questions. It's their job to help you. They know the system backwards. And for somebody like me who works in the laboratory, I never had anything to do with finance or management or anything like that. But I'd always ask the question, and ask people around you. Somebody will always have an answer. Or if they don't have it, they know someone that has. I tell you, the very first thing I did was I went on a big holiday. I went to Canada.
Lovely.
And I love train journeys, and I always wanted to do a long train journey. So we flew to Toronto, took a train right across Canada to Vancouver, and then we went on a train journey through the Rocky Mountains.
Lovely.
And then flew home from Vancouver again, and that was an amazing journey.
Okay.
So that was to set me up then for the retirement.
Sure.
That was the first thing I did. I obviously explored when I would start my new part-time job with the company, and we decided we'd start at the end of the summer. So I felt it would be a good idea if I just took a few months to do nothing. I would advise that, because don't rush into anything that you might regret or you might make a wrong decision. I would say relax. Go for walks, go out for the day, go away for a weekend.
Sure.
Suss out your social circle. If you know people who are retired, make contact.
I think a lot of people might consider other roles at retirement, so they mightn't actually stop working altogether. But also there's the likelihood that we're going to live for another 20 to 25 years beyond retirement, and we have to plan for that as well. A lot of people may get a lump sum that they may have to consider putting away. And I suppose historically people would have looked to the likes of the banks to invest the money in terms of deposits. But what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years is that the deposit rates available have started to come down quite significantly. If you were looking for deposit rates, some of them have actually turned negative. So if you give the bank your money, you're going to get back less in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time. I think, it's a unique situation. If you run back to the beginning of the year and you mentioned the word COVID-19 in January, not very many people would have heard of it. So it's really crept up on the world, and obviously also on investors. And what we've seen is a situation where equity markets reacted initially very poorly to what was happening in the world, with equity markets down roughly about 33%. Since then, we've seen a remarkable recovery. In fact, equity markets have recovered 38%. So we've had quite a strong recovery. I think what it does illustrate, though, is that you often get events, and we always will. There'll be this wall of worry. We don't know what the next wall of worry will be. But if you step back a little bit and you take a longer term perspective on your investments, that's a much better way to actually allocate your money. Yes, well, certainly we've seen quite a volatile equity market in 2020. And I think one of the most important things for many investors is to actually have their plans. So you might actually allocate some of your money in terms of what your short-term needs would be. So you keep cash set aside for your day-to-day spending. But then you would look then at your more medium-term objectives and your investments on that side. And that's a bit often that, what we often see is that some retail investors sell out of their medium-term investments, particularly at the wrong time. And we would often say to people, just refer back to your plan and stick to the plan, even when markets are slightly volatile, because often they recover and can recover quite strongly.
I think a bit of anxiety a month before any big change is a natural thing to feel. Totally normal, because you're entering into a moment of change and your body is reacting to that. It knows something is different. I would probably be more happy with those people who are worried than the people who aren't worried. So it's more about managing your expectations. But globally, usually what you find is only about 5% of people after you retire are happier. They kind of come out and, so if you think you're going to come straight out onto your boat, your expectations have been set too high. And then you hit the wall of reality, which can have a big knockback. And interesting personality types that do well are people that are flexible and open to change. And that's so if you're prepared for the change, and you can still be nervous. But if you're prepared, you'll do better than people who are not. So if you're trying to cling on to an interesting piece of research too is people who try to maintain their status and their social group, as in the same friends. So they're trying to hold on to a lot of it, suffered more. The people who just, I suppose, let it go and just wait for it to change. Yes, I'm going to lose some relationships, but I'm going to gain others. About 25% of people suffer a big hit. I call it a big hit psychologically after, and that may be to do with not planning. It could be to do with lots of things. But the good news is that they usually come back. But the majority of people, 70%, go through an adjustment period, an uncomfortable period, a naturally uncomfortable period, and they come back and they adjust, and they're as they were.
Yeah,
you know,
back
they're
to
either
themselves.
happier or they're back to themselves.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right,
Okay. So that was part 2 of our retirement planning videos. We hope you enjoyed that. Our next part will be released next Tuesday, so that's the 29th of September at 7:30, and that will look at some issues you might face in retirement. So if you'd like to request a retirement pack, you can contact myself at sarah.connolly@ipf.ie. And also, if you'd like to book in for one of our retirement consultations, you can contact the same email address, or if you'd like to phone us, the phone number is 01 829 8500.